Hello everyone, this is Andrew from Crown Academy of English. Today's lesson is a lesson called Speak Like a Native English Speaker, Part 3. So in this lesson you will learn 7 more English expressions commonly used by native English speakers. And this is part 3 in a series of several videos. So let's start. So the first expression is very common in British English. It's informal British English, and we only really use it in spoken English. So can you guess what this means? Well, here it is. It's a cup of tea. A cup of tea. And we just shorten it to a cuppa. A cuppa. And British people love tea, so this is a very common expression. Example: Jane says, "Do you fancy a cuppa?" Do you fancy a cuppa? And Claire says, "Yes, please." Do you fancy? Fancy means would you like? Do you want a cuppa? Okay. Often used with when you're offering food or drink to someone. David says, "Hi Sarah, sit down. I'll make you a cuppa. I'll make you a cuppa." Thanks. So I'll make you a cuppa. This means that I will make a cup of tea for you. Okay? A cuppa, very, very typical expression in British English. Speak of the devil. So, we say the expression speak of the devil to show that we are talking about someone. So I'm going to give you quite a long example to explain this. This is quite complicated, so I'm going to give you a very detailed example. So, Jane and Claire are talking in the office. Okay, so Jane and Claire are talking in the office and they are alone. This is important. So there is only Jane and Claire who are in the office, nobody else. The subject of their conversation is Mark. So they are talking about Mark. So Claire asks, "How is Mark?" And Jane says, "He's fine. It's his birthday today." Okay? And then at that moment, after Jane says this, Mark walks into the office. So here he is, here's Mark. So Mark is now in the same office. He's now with Jane and Claire. So Claire sees Mark and she says, "Speak of the devil. Speak of the devil. Happy birthday, Mark." Okay, so this is a fun expression. In fact, it's a little joke in English. And so basically this indicates to Mark that they were talking about him. So they're saying speak of the devil. So obviously the devil is a bad person. So they're just joking at Mark, calling him the devil. Speak of the devil. So yes, we use it to show that we are talking about someone. So if you walk into a room somewhere or you pass next to some people, and if they look at you and say, "Speak of the devil," then you know that they are talking about you. Okay? So if you ever hear this, then it means someone is talking about you. Hang on. This is a phrasal verb. And it means to wait. That's all it means, to wait. And it is usually for a short period of time. So maybe a few minutes or a few seconds. And we often say this during a phone call. Example: So the secretary is giving an address to someone. The address is 5 Oxford Street, and Mark interrupts and says, "Hang on, let me get a pen." So, hang on, let me get a pen. I'm going to write this down. So Mark is saying, "Oh, please wait a few seconds while I find a pen." Okay, I need to find a pen. Please wait a few seconds. But we say hang on. Okay? And we also use it face to face. So this means when you're physically talking to someone who is in front of you, who is next to you. Jane says, "We're going for a walk. Do you want to come?" Claire replies, "Yes, but it's raining." "Hang on, I'll get my umbrella." So hang on, I'll get my umbrella. So just wait a few seconds, I'll get my umbrella. Okay? I'm afraid. Well, there are two meanings to this. I'm sure you all know the usual, the common meaning. The usual meaning is I'm scared. A common example, I'm afraid of ghosts. Or you can say, I'm afraid of the dark. Or I'm afraid of heights. Okay, it means I'm scared. So I'm sure you already know that meaning. But there's another meaning. The other meaning is, we say I'm afraid to politely give bad news. And it means, sorry, but. Okay, so we say this when we are giving bad news to someone and we know that we are going to disappoint the other person. So we're trying to be polite. Okay, we're trying to empathize with the other person. We're trying to sympathize with the other person. Okay, we don't want to offend the other person. So it's a very polite way of giving bad news. Example, you're in a hotel and the hotel receptionist is telling you that there are no more rooms. So the receptionist says, I'm afraid that we have no more rooms. I'm afraid that we have no more rooms. So this means, I'm sorry, but we have no more rooms. I'm sorry, but we have no more rooms. I'm afraid that we have no more rooms. I've put the word that in bold because often I'm afraid is followed by a that clause. A that clause. Okay, I'm afraid that something, something, something. Okay? So this, we're not talking about fear. The receptionist is not scared. Okay, this is not this meaning. It's completely different. It's politely giving the bad news to the customer. Another example, the teacher says, I'm afraid that you have failed the exam. I'm afraid that you have failed the exam. So the teacher is saying, I'm sorry, but you have failed the exam. And here is a very common example, unfortunately. A very sad story. John asks, do you love me? And the answer is no. Jane says, I'm afraid not. I'm afraid not. So this means, sorry, but no. Sorry, I don't love you. Okay, so here is a broken heart. Very sad story. Poor John. This is a very common one. Couldn't care less. Couldn't care less. So this means to think that something is not important. To not feel interested in something. And to not be upset or angry about something. Okay? So something bad happens, but you are not sad, you are not angry, you are not upset. okay, because you're not interested. It's not important to you. Okay, this is a very strong expression, strong meaning. It's almost aggressive. Example. So Claire and I think it's David. Claire and David are playing video games. And Claire is saying to David, if you don't study, you're going to fail the exam. Okay, because David, he's not studying for his exam, he's playing video games. So Claire is saying, is warning him, if you don't study, you're going to fail the exam. And David replies, I couldn't care less about the exam. I couldn't care less about the exam. So David is saying, the exam is not important. I'm not interested in the exam. And I won't be upset if I fail the exam. Okay, so this is, as I said, it's quite strong meaning. It's almost quite aggressive. So be careful when you use this. Mark asks, are you going to vote in the election? And Jane replies, no, I couldn't care less about politics. I couldn't care less about politics. So she's not going to vote. Okay, so this means that politics is not important for Jane. Jane is not interested in politics, and the fact that she's not going to vote, she's not going to be angry about it, she's not going to be sad, because she couldn't care less. Okay, not interested. How come? I actually have a separate video about this, but here is a very quick explanation. We say how come to ask why something has happened. So the meaning is why. It's a why question. And when we say how come, we are surprised by the situation. Okay, so we're expressing surprise about something and we want to know the reason for something. So Jane says, I'm not hungry. She doesn't want to eat. And Mark says, how come? So Mark wants to know why. So Mark is very surprised that Jane is not hungry. He's perhaps concerned and he's asking why. Here is a comparison of why questions and how come questions, because the meaning is the same. The meaning of why and how come, the meaning is the same, but the form of the question is different. Okay, the form of the question is different, the grammar. So why, a why question is followed by the question form of the verb and then the question mark. Example. Why did you sell your house? Why did you sell your house? So this is a why question in the past simple form. So the form is did you sell? Okay, because this is the past simple form of this is the question form of the past simple. Did you, followed by the base form. Why did you sell your house? But a how come question is different. After how come, we have the affirmative form and a question mark. But it is still a question. It's a question. The meaning is a question, but the form is the affirmative. So with how come, we say, how come you sold your house? How come you sold your house? So here we have the affirmative form of the past simple. You sold. Okay? So this question and this question, the meaning is exactly the same. This means the same as this. But as you can see, the grammar and the form is different. So don't forget, if you use how come with a question, then it's the affirmative form. No worries. We use this to tell someone that a bad situation is fine. And it means no problem. That there is no problem, it's not an issue. Mark says, I'm sorry, I have broken your pencil. And David says, no worries, I didn't really need it anyway. I didn't really need it anyway. So David is reassuring Mark. He is saying, it's not a problem. No problem. No worries. When you bump into someone on a busy street is a very common example. So here is, I think this is Oxford Street in London, a very busy street. And person one says, oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't looking where I was walking. And the other person says, no worries, it's not a problem. Don't worry about it, this means, okay? It's fine, okay? So there we are, that's the end. If you are preparing for the IELTS exam, then I strongly recommend the Crown Academy of English IELTS online course. So click here for more information. And here are some other videos that I recommend.